Hey guys, I'm Dustin with Avid. Today I'm going to show you how to use the master sight pusher when working on your pistol and changing out sights. In today's video, we're actually going to be working on a Glock slide. Before we get started on pressing any sights out of our slide, we want to make sure we use some real Avid gun oil, and we're going to apply it to a couple of surfaces. So on the pusher block rod, there's a snap ring here. We're going to put a little touch of oil right here. Then we're going to put a little bit on each side of the pusher block, and this is going to make sure that everything moves nice and smoothly. And when we're working on sights, our job is done that much easier. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a little helpful hint that I use on my slides. Now, today we're running this nice, fancy, polished chrome slide, so I'm going to use a different color marker. But what I do is I take a black marker, and I'm actually going to just kind of draw a line down the center, and that lets me know where the center of the frame is and where my sights came from the factory. Now, if you have a black slide or anything else, I usually use a silver little Sharpie. So little helpful hint before you get started so you're not trying to figure out how to get back to center. Put this away, and now what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at our press block. So this is going to be our press block right here, and I'm going to look at the angle of my sight. I can see that's a curve or a 60-degree angle roughly, and my sight block is actually set up wrong for this. So I'm actually going to use my easy torque handle, and I'm going to push this or turn this all the way to the right. So as we move this over, you can see we get to a part where there's no wall in the back, and this will spin. Now as I'm spinning, I'll see that I have a 90-degree angle on this one. Flip it over, and I have a 60-degree angle. To remove the factory sights, I'm actually going to need a 60-degree angle, so I'll line that up, bring it back to center. All right, so we got that pretty close to center. So now what I'm going to do is flip this around and make sure my takedown or my hold down slide is where it should be. Grab my slide, I'm going to slide it in to the middle here. And the slide is actually going to come in over the dovetail. Now, when I'm looking at my black slider I have in there, I actually have a line on top. What this line is for, it's an indicator. This indicator helps me know that like when I'm pushing the slide in, it needs to be closer to center. And if it's centered with this, then my dovetail, when it comes down on the push block, it should fit right in the dovetail slots, and I should be able to push the slide out right or left, depending on the manufacturing specs. All right, so we're going to get this pretty close. We're going to tighten up the front two sliders. We're going to spin this around. I'm going to tighten up the rear ones. On the actual sight pusher, we have some little lines in the little grid, and that'll help you kind of make sure you get this lined up straight. Now I'm just going to kind of bring my push block down and make sure I'm lined up with my sight. I'm now going to use my right and left stabilizer, and I'm going to start to turn these down. Now while I'm doing that, I want to keep my eye on the push block as it comes down, because I don't want to come down too far and possibly scratch my slide. At any time, if you're working on the master sight pusher and you start to see that it gets it starts to bind up as you're using the stabilizers going down. So double check your measurements, make sure that the actual top of the master sight pusher is going down level and it's not getting canted one way or the other. If it starts to get canted one way or the other, you can tell that you've got one side tighter than the other, so we'll just start to tighten down the other side and start to balance them out a little bit. So I've got that where it needs to be. And now I'm going to spin it around, and this is my hold down clamp. I'm going to spin this down till it's tight. Now, thing you got to pay attention to is if you start to over tighten this down, though it's a nylon plastic, depending on the finish, it can mar that finish. So it doesn't need to be tight, it just needs to be a little snug. And what that's going to do is put the downward pressure. My slides are coming in on the side. They're going to put the side pressure on it so it shouldn't rotate. Now we can tighten these up on the side a little bit more, but the top one just needs to be snug. Now, on a Glock, I can push right or left, but if you're working on a SIG, they may have a direction. They may say you need to push right to left to get the sight out, and then you're going to put the sight in left to right. That's dependent on the manufacturer, so be sure to check with your manufacturing specs before you work on this. But for a Glock, I can go right or left. That doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is before I just go right into pushing the sight out, I'm going to start to bring it in one direction. And what I'm going to look for is the clearance. Make sure that the block is not hitting the slide. And now I'm going to feel a little bit of tension when I get on the slide. That's okay. This is built to handle 150 inch-pounds of torque. So as long as everything stays within that, I can move right or left. Now I like to continuously double check, make sure everything looks good as I'm pushing, that I'm not coming up on the top of the slide. I've got plenty of clearance. Now if I was doing this at home, I'd have it oriented the other way so I can actually see there, and I'd be turning this, but for video purposes, we're just gonna go this direction. All right, guys, so there is the factory sight for the Glock. So I'm gonna put that off to the side here in a little tray, and I'm gonna pull out my new aftermarket sight. And the first thing I notice is that it does have a degree. Maybe it's a 60 degree, maybe it's 30 degree, but what I can see on the other end is that it is a 90 degree. And I know that my press block has a 90 degree. So I'm gonna actually move my press block all the way over to the right. I'm gonna flip it back over to the 90 degree and I'm gonna bring it back to center. And that will help me work on pushing this sight in. But actually I've gotta put a new sight in there. So I'm just gonna kind of push it to where the left side of my block is lined up with the mark that I made on the slide. You can see this is just lined up perfect. What that allows me to do is get this sight pushed in by hand, and hopefully it should sit off center like that, and then I don't have to do too much maneuvering. So we're gonna take the hold down clamp, we're gonna loosen it up. We don't have to take too much tension off. We just wanna take enough where I can start to feel that the top of the sight pusher gets a little loose. Take my stabilizers, lift those up a little bit, and then we're gonna start to loosen up the side clamps. I can push the slide forward enough that I can get to it and take my rear sight, my new one, start pushing it in by hand. So we always want to double check everything that we're doing before we finally start pushing the slide, because we could cause some damage. We're going to tighten everything down. So everything now is good. I can see on the side that my actual pusher block is not dragging the bottom of that dovetail. Now, on darker slides, that's going to be hard. So if you've got a black slide, or let's say you've done any other color, I always take a flashlight and I can actually come in here and look and see the clearance that I have. So that's just another little trick. Use a flashlight, make sure you get in there, check the slide, check the sights, make sure nothing's binding up or dragging across your frame, because we don't want to cause any damage. So now I've got everything there, and all I'm going to do is start pushing this sight back in. And then I'll just keep pushing until I get the center of the sight lined up with my black mark that I made. That's about center. Back this off a little bit, spin it around, loosen up our hold down clamp. Now, because I want to pull the whole slide out now, I'm actually going to loosen up my stabilizers all the way. All right, guys, so that's just a quick tutorial of how I'm going to use a master sight pusher when changing sights out on my slides. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, and I'll see you guys at the range.